I would like to introduce Eric and allow him to get started with his presentation for today.
Hello, all, and thank you, Brian, for engineering today's webinar, as well as to New Horizons for sponsoring it and organizing it. Thank you so much. Before I will tell you who I am, and then we'll get into the material. My name is Eric Bloom. I'm the president and founder of Manager Mechanics. We specialize in IT leadership and IT business skills. A couple of things on myself, like 2 seconds worth, and then it's 58 minutes of material, is that I'm a columnist for CIO.com. My column's Driving IT Productivity. I've written the books shown here, the one I'm excited about them all, but coming out in January, I have one called Productivity Driven Success, which is, well, exactly what it sounds like. It has some really cool things in there. I'm also the immediate past president of National Speakers Association. I'm a CIO by background, and very much look forward to being with you today. Whoop. There we go. Before I start talking about the topology of conflict, what I'd like to do is just say a couple of things. First of all is that before we talk about 3 areas, the first of which is just about 4 slides on conflict in general. The second section will be all the places on IT where conflicts can occur. And then the third segment of the webinar will be things that you should know and things that will help you with it to use those to your advantage. And as mentioned in the title, is IT conflict can bring enormous advantage both to IT, to the business it serves, as well as to you personally. But before all this conflict stuff, given the fact that it's the middle of December, I'd just like to wish everybody on the line a happy holiday season and a very happy and healthy new year coming up. So from here, let's just pop right into material. Now, everything that you're going to ever see regarding conflict, certainly within the next hour, is based on one of these 5 areas. The first of which is, in other words, these are the things that cause conflicts to occur. It could be based on data. In other words, I know one thing, you know another thing, or we've interpreted data differently, or we've received different intelligence on the same topic, etc. So as a result of that is that because we're looking or have interpreted data differently, we're in conflict about what to do about it. The next is interest. That's scarce resource. Say, for example, let's say that Brian, who was engineering this, is the best Java programmer on God's green earth. So what happens is I want him as well as someone else wants him, another manager. So the 2 of us might be arguing over a scarce resource. That scarce resource is being Brian. It could be budget. It could be bonus money. It could be anything that there's scarce levels of. The next is value. And by value, I don't mean that my values are better than yours or your values are better than mine. It might be just that I'm rather risk averse and you're more willing to take on risk. So as a result of that is when we're figuring out how to engage with a vendor, because I am risk averse, I'm saying, hey, we should spend a little extra money and go with a fixed price contract. But maybe you're thinking, well, you know what? I think we can save money for the company if we go with time and materials. Now, neither one of us is a better or a worse person for having either side of that coin. Neither of us is really right or wrong. I guess we would figure it out based on how the contract went. But it's a differences in value, how we view things. Next, relationships is that, excuse me, sometimes people just don't get along. It could be poor communication. It could be other things. And lastly is structural, is that I'm a software developer, you're a tester. Or I am a software developer by background. But I'm a software developer and you're in the data center. I mean, these are all of the places where conflicts and goals are not aligned necessarily at an individual level. On relationship, I'm just going to give you a very fast, funny story on that. And then actually, that's the last time you'll see this one as we talk about things through the presentation. About 20 years ago, I was working in a company. I was transferred to from one department to another. And in that other department, it was my job, basically, to manage the automation of that particular department. So the manager of that department, the woman that was managing it, was effectively my dotted line manager for the year or 2 ahead. So first time I met her, I wouldn't say hate was a strong enough word. I would say it was more like disdain. And I didn't know why. And here I'm thinking, and this person is going to be writing my performance review for the next year. I mean, I'm horrified over this. I didn't know what I did. So, I tried a couple of things. I tried to be, very professional, and I tried to show that I was working hard to get to know the systems and the people on my new team, etc. But every time we were in a room, it was just awful. So finally, I mean, I'm literally rewriting my resume in my head. I went over to her office, and I said to her, as I said, whenever, it seems that there's some issue that you have with me, that I must have upset you in some way. Whatever I did, I apologize. Please let me know what it is, and can we just start over? Well, actually, she looked down and started to laugh a little bit. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm out of a job. But anyway, she looks up at me and she says, actually, the issue isn't you, it's me. And I said, well, what do you mean? I don't understand. She says, you look exactly like my ex-husband. So we laughed about it a little bit, and she says, I'll tell you what, I'll try not to think of him when I look at you under one condition. Here I'm in relief, because I literally thought that I was losing my job that day. And she says, I'll tell you what, I'll try not to think of my ex-husband when I look at you under one condition. I said, what? Anything. She says, if we're ever arguing over a topic and I call you Jeff, you know why. So anyway, is that sometimes there's conflict just because people are people. But what we're going to be talking about more here are things directly related to IT, what they are, how you can use them to your advantage. So let's first talk about healthy and unhealthy conflict. What healthy conflict is it's basically like brainstorming, where I have one idea and you have another. Back to that thing on value that I mentioned on the previous slide here, is that I may say fixed price, and you may say, let's go with time and materials. And because of our diversity of thought, which is another term you'll be seeing here, we come about it a little bit from a little bit more of a perspective and say, hey, I'll tell you what, how about this part of it? We'll do, say, the service part of the agreement. We'll do that on time and materials. The reason being is because that one will probably be less. But the actual implementation, maybe it would make sense to do that based on fixed price, or vice versa. So the two of us discussing it, because we bring it from different opinions, if we're working together to come up with a better decision than either one of us could have come up with alone, then that's really healthy conflict. What it is it's diversity at its best in the workplace, where, we might be compromising, we might be comparing notes, we may be coming up with new ideas or brainstorming, or between the two of us, or four of us, or eight of us, we come up with a better solution than any one of us could have come up with alone. Unhealthy conflict is, and we'll see sort of the symptoms of that in the next slide, is that's where it's, oh yeah, we should do fixed price, oh yeah, we should do variable, and so on. And it's just basically where we spend more of our creative effort protecting ourselves from each other than actually trying to solve the issue at hand. So, as individual contributors or as managers, what's our job as IT professionals, maybe it's between us and the business, maybe it's between onshore and offshore, is to recognize when unhealthy conflict is occurring, because it can be very, very divisive. This is what's called the conflict spiral, where, think about it now. Let's say that I'm I was a software developer, and let's say that Brian is a tester. So I say, hey Brian, I hear you're going to be testing my stuff again. Is that here's the module, just give it a once over, whatever we need, we got to move it into production. Brian finds a couple of bugs in it that he thinks are really big bugs that should stop it from going into production. But me, I'm feeling pretty good with it. I think it's fine because I just don't see those bugs as being too big of an issue. So he says to me, sorry, Eric, I don't think we can put it into production yet. We got to get these two bugs fixed. And I look over and I say, what do you mean, Brian? Come on, we got to get this thing in. I'm under a lot of pressure. It's going to take some time to re-architect for that piece. We'll do it as a next rev. Sorry, Eric, I'm not letting it into production till it's done. Now this is me. Brian, all you testers are the same. You've tested this, you've tested other stuff. You know, I'm going to change the name of your department to the production avoidance department. You know what? Eric? If you testers would actually, if you software developers would develop it right the first time, it wouldn't be an issue. Oh yeah, I'm going to escalate this, and I'm going to get you off this project. Now, if you think about it, what's gone on during that conversation, by the way, Brian's is not a tester, and I like him a lot. I'm just using him in this example, is that we started with, very light tactics. You know, it was, no, we shouldn't, yes, you should, that kind of thing. We're discussing it. Then it got expanded. The tactics went from lighter to heavier. Like, damn, I want you to throw this stuff in. And then it's, you know what? It's not only this time. You never move stuff into production. We went from multiple issues now to general issues. And then now all of a sudden it's, I want you off my project, and so on. So what happens is, as you see basically this conflict spiraling down and getting worse to worse, the first thing for you to do is recognize it and begin to do things, some of which we'll be talking about. I mean, certainly this isn't a class on conflict resolution, but if you've never taken one, it's well worth your while. But anyway, as you see this start to occur, try to move it back up by changing your tact, working with the other person, etc. Because this will cause basically stagnation in your projects and personal issues with these other people. And just remember, as you go through your career, your professional friends come and go. You know, you take a new job, they take a new job, you move to different departments, you end up working with them 5 years later, and it's, oh my God, it's nice to work with you again. Your professional friends come and go, but your professional enemies accumulate. What you'll find with your projects, when people don't allow you to get what you're going, to say, gee, why won't this tester approve this? Or, gee, why can't I get 3 new servers in the data center? Or, oh, this project manager never does it the way that I want to. It's shown here. 99% of the time, it has nothing to do with you. Is that people aren't against you. Excuse me. They're for themselves. So what does that mean? Why is that important to you? First of all, you don't have to feel paranoid that the people who don't do what you want don't like you. But more than that, if you can understand why it's not in their best interest for you to do whatever it is you need them to do, move something into production, gen a new server, pop out an old PC for a new one, whatever it is. If you can figure out why they don't want to do it, then that will allow you to change your tact and suggest it or work with them in another way to make it happen. You'll see that again in a later slide. So from here now, let's turn to actually talking about some things in IT that cause issues. The first of which here is, is shown, is methodologies and philosophies. Let's talk about some of them. The first one there, waterfall versus agile. Maybe the corporate computing still uses a waterfall type methodology. And by the way, as I go through these, in-source versus outsource, offshore versus inshore, central versus decentralized data governance, ITIL versus light ITIL, and all of these others, understand, like I said before, there's no right or wrong in this. There's just difference of opinion. So as a result of that is that know that I have no agenda that you should go with agile instead of waterfall, or that lean IT is good or bad, or whatever the topic is. I'm just trying to present it, from a a nonpartisan philosophy on all of these. So if I go either way, either for you or against you. If I go for you, don't go yay, and if I go against you, don't go, oh, I can't believe he thinks that way. I'm trying to do this again sort of as non-partial reporting. So agile versus waterfall. Say that the corporate group does waterfall and the smaller divisions or subdivisions of the company are doing agile. Typical conflict you'll get is the corporate people saying, I can't believe they're developing software without documentation. How do they expect us to work with them? Expect us to do column every day? All right, and people in the agile side are saying, oh man, those folks at corporate, everything is a document, What bureaucracy? It's a wonder why they get anything done. all right, is that actually is a fairly big one going on in the industry. And we're going to talk about actually the agile waterfall thing again a little later. Lean IT. How could anybody be against lean IT? Well, you know what? People have trouble understanding a concept that reduces their paycheck. So what I mean by that is with lean IT, which by the way I will say on this one I am a big favor of, is that lean IT reduces costs, which ties to productivity, which, as you know, is what a book I have coming out in January for. I can't even sell it to you. It's not out yet. I just threw that in. But anyway, is that for lean IT, because when you start with lean IT, the definition of it, among other things, is you start reducing costs in different ways. Well, when you start reducing costs, you start reducing budgets. You basically are taking things away in one way or another from people within IT, and that can cause issue. Next one is ITIL. ITIL, if you're not familiar with it, I strongly suggest you learn about it. It's little by little taking the IT industry by storm. What it was developed by the British government, and it is a 5-part service model on how to enhance the service that IT provides to its clients. But anyway, at its heaviest, it's very bureaucratic and process-oriented. So what happens is a lot of companies that have tried to implement it are moving to what sort of on a wink and a nod they call ITIL Light, which is the basic philosophies of ITIL, but a little bit lighter. So what happens, lighter in process. So what happens typically is you may get the people rolling out ITIL saying this is how we do it, this is how we do it. The operational people, the testers, software developers, data center people, they're saying back off a little bit. We like what you're trying to do, but it's too much paperwork for us. Others are in the area of centralized data governance, versus application level governance. So, what does that mean from that perspective is that basically who controls your data. Now the next one, traditional data centers, as they've been running for a long time, and dark data centers, or me being from Boston, if you can't tell by my accent yet, it's not dark data centers, it's dark data centers. But anyway, I just threw that one in for fun. But here is that what you're going basically against here is the traditional data center requires more people to manage and physically showing up at the location as opposed to a dark data center, which is primarily very, very heavily automation-based. So as a result is that you may have difficulty getting your data center people to want to move toward a dark data center because it could potentially put their jobs in peril. As could in-house development versus offshore, versus outsourcing development or whatever you're outsourcing. For example, help desk is very often a function that's outsourced. Whether that's good or bad, there's lots of sides of that I won't get into now. But if actually you'd be interested in that stuff as a webinar at a future time, please let New Horizons or drop me an email. Maybe we could fit it in next year. But anyway, next is onshore versus offshore resources. These both have their positive and negative effects. Here I'm simply going to say is that this can cause some major type conflicts within IT. And again, we're going through all the conflicts now, and then we're going to discuss what to do about them in a little bit. The next one is, I call this category, like the old Miller ad, great taste, less filling. Now, what this is the first 3 of these are based on people's skill sets. In other words, if I'm an Oracle DBA or a Java developer using I'm going blank on it. What is it? JDBC to get to Oracle, and that's my skill set. Then I'm going to say, hey, everything should be in these technologies. And then there's the Microsoft group, which is SQL Server and .NET, and then of course open source, MySQL and PHP, which is part of the LAMP structure. That being Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And each of these are different skill sets. Certainly they're transferable, and there's many people who can work in more than one. But if you're heavily stated and professionally through experience and training in one of these 3 areas, there are very hot debates on what that new application should be written in because it has professional implications. And then the last one, do you build it, do you buy it, or do you rent it, which is basically the cloud, as shown there. A sec here. Sorry, all sorts of noise going out in the hallway, and I missed my primary job, which was to make sure that everything was quiet when the webinar started. But anyway, that has been corrected. I just hope it's not a fire alarm, because if so, it might get hot in here. But anyway, is that the build, buy, and cloud has major implications on people's professions, maybe even their job. So as a result, as you can expect, is that can bring some heated debate. Next is limited resources. If you remember, we talked about that in the first slide, where I said that Brian was a great Java developer, and we were both fighting for him, so to speak. So from here is that what could these be over? It could be over bonus dollars. I know I worked at a company once where everyone knew that the manager or the director or whoever your boss was had a certain amount of bonus dollars that he or she had to give out basically to the people within his or her staff. And as a result of that, we always wanted to work together. We wanted to have good camaraderie. We wanted to help each other. But at the end of the day, I know that if I helped Brian too much, then he may end up getting some of my bonus dollars. So it was a little bit tricky because of how that was done. Next is departmental budgets, same kind of thing. Is that, let's say that you and I are both managers, and our manager comes to us and says, hey, I have $20,000 in training budget to divide between you. You figure out who gets how much. That's another example of scarce resources. For there, what you might want to do is that maybe if we were tying this back to healthy and unhealthy conflict. Healthy conflict would be saying, hey, well, how can we together work with this 20 grand? Hey, I have an idea. Your department, you were going to get a Java trainer in for a day, weren't you, at, say, 2 grand? And I was going to get a Java trainer in for 2 grand. By the way, don't try to find a good Java programmer for 2 grand, but just the math works. But anyway, so the two managers, me and you, would say, hey, I'll tell you what. How about instead of us each bringing in one, we take 2 grand off the top, and we split the cost of the Java developer to come in and train both of our groups. So what that is, that's us working together. That's healthy conflict regarding, oh yeah, you got 15 grand last year. You'll be lucky if you're going to get 5. I'm going to go down to the manager's office and talk about it. Oh yeah, well, best we should do is split 10-10 and forget it. You see the difference between those is by us working together, even with limited resources, that 20 grand. We can find things that are to both of our advantages. Same thing with dotted line resources or office space. That one, it's really interesting. But office space is one of those things that can cause very, very heated debates. And by the way, I should say, if you have any questions that you have that you'd like to address on any of these topics, or just comments that you think would be worthwhile, please feel free to throw them into the question box. And Brian will be keeping an eye out for those and sort of interrupt me as time allows to answer your questions. But I'm happy to answer them throughout, as well as in the end if anyone has any specific questions. But anyway, office space, boy, can that be divisive. I mean, think about it. For you personally, or you and your team, if you're a manager, is where would you rather have your office be? Overlooking the ocean, or on the other side of the building, overlooking the dumpsters in the parking lot? Well, that's why it can get really, really heated. And the next is attention to common key individuals. What that is that if I pay a lot of attention to one person in my group or to certain business users, or if I have, let's say that I'm an individual contributor generating reports, and I have 2 managers who are trying to get me to develop their reports for them. Well, you know what? Then I'm the limited resource. They're both fighting, not only with each other, but with me to get their work done. And it can be a very, very stressful situation for all 3. For me, it's like I have 2 bosses telling me different kinds of things and so on, as opposed to what reports can both people use, etc. Now that brings us to just personal type values. Is that we referred to that one earlier when we were talking about the fixed price or variable price, time and materials type contract. That would tie to the first one which was level of acceptable risk, and said, wait a minute, you already talked about values. Yes, I did. Everything I will ever talk about related to conflicts will tie back to that initial slide, which is why I showed it first. Why? Because that is the definition of topology of conflict. So by definition, they'll all fall into this. But anyway, let's look at some of the others. Degree of business ethics. Certainly, I'm not going to dig too deeply into that one, but let me just say that some people are more unscrupulous than others, and that can definitely cause tension within the IT group. The next one is work ethic. The work ethic, and I'll tie to that, even though they're different items, is work-life balance. Work ethic is how hard people work. Work-life balance is how many hours they're actually working. So, for example, you may get someone when they're in the office, and again, I'm not going whether there's a right or wrong on these. I'm just illustrating different type people. You'll get someone who has a really, really strong work ethic. Boy, they're in at 8 o'clock instead of 9. They work till 5, and boy, when they're there, they are just eating it up. I mean, they're working as hard as anybody you've ever seen. The speed, minimum breaks, things along that line. But you know what? 5 o'clock comes, they want to be home with their kids, they want proper work-life balance. Then you'll get other people who are of different combinations of these two. Their work ethic is marginal, they're at the office and, they can't wait for Cyber Monday because don't expect anything out of them. They're going to be on Amazon.com all day, that kind of stuff. But they tend to work lots of hours. They're there till like 7 at night or a little later. Why? Because they have trouble getting their work done because they're not working all that hard during the day. So with different types of personalities, it can bring different types of issues as it relates to their feeling on those two items. And the last of which is task prioritization. This is a big one. Say, for example, that I have 5 people that I'm generating reports for or doing tasks for, whatever it is. If I make the decision, if I can only have enough time to do 2 of them, then by definition, if I say, hey, person A and B are have the most important projects, person C, D, and E are going to be very upset with me. And what a great way to start your new performance cycle with 3 of the 5 people that you're supposed to support think that you have bad decision-making skills. So task prioritization is an extremely hot topic on driving performance, on causing issues, particularly if IT is not being charged back to the business units. For them, it's a free resource, and they want as much as possible. Next area is natural task conflicts. What these are is, let's just take a few examples, the first of which is software developers versus data center professionals. The big one there is that the software developers want computer power. The old joke in the sort of the software development world is how many servers do you need for that to build that new project? The answer to that is how many servers you got. Development teams always want more environments, more computer power, etc. On the data center side, they're doing server consolidation, things along that line. What's actually minimized this over the years is virtual computing, VMware, things along that line. But it's definitely a push that the developers want more and more resources, more and more power, when the data center people are being judged based on the opposite. Software developers and testing, we already spoke on that one. Actually, I used that as the example earlier on the conflict spiral, where I threw my friend Brian under the bus. I'm sorry, Brian. Where you wanted to get things into production versus being tested, etc. The third of which is web designers and web developers. Now, why here? Because web designers basically want to make things pretty. They want to have them functional. They want to have them look as slick and neat as possible, as they should. Quite frankly, I've always personally been jealous of people who could do a great job developing websites. I can say that I'm okay with it, but by no means do I have the ability of a strong web design. Web developers, what they're interested in is the ability to come up with designs that facilitate easy development. I'll give you an example of this, is that when I was doing web development about 10 years ago, was it 10? No, it was 15 years, well, I guess about 10 years ago, is the web designers came up with a design for the website that basically the way they used circular graphics and other things along this line, whereas it looked really pretty. I took one look at it and said, wow, I love the way this looks, but there's no way we're ever going to get this thing to work. So what happened is we went back and forth between, look and function, and it caused some heated debates. Now, the last one here shown is data center professionals versus people who are basically outsourcing advocates. That's infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. So if I was maintaining hardware and Jennings servers in the data center, and other people were talking about moving it all to the cloud, such as into Azure or to the physical computing, either into Azure or into Amazon Web Services, I would be really upset over that discussion. Why? Because whereas the above three are basically issues in execution, the bottom one is an issue very possibly, am I getting to keep my job? So, first question for you here is, how can all this conflict be good for IT? If remember, the title of today's webinar is Using Internal IT Conflicts for Your Company's Advantage. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking anybody who's looking at this list so far is saying, wow, and we're going to use this to your advantage, to our advantage. How? This is what I'd like to do now in the next couple of slides. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk, we'll move from here to basically how to solve them. So the first way that this is good for IT, all of this conflict, is the value of diversity in the workplace. I mean, don't underestimate the incredible value that this brings to it. Now, when I'm saying diversity here, I mean diversity with a small d, not a big D. Certainly, big D is included within it. And what I mean now, when you think of diversity, you tend to think of ethnicity and gender. Certainly, those are parts of diversity, but I'm expanding that definition here to include someone with a Bachelor of Arts degree, someone with a degree in computer science, someone who's a Gen Yer right out of school, a millennial, and someone who's a baby boomer like myself. People who went through the U.S. school system, those who didn't, those who went directly into, did not go to college and got Cisco certifications and things along that line, moved up the profession that way, versus someone who went to a four-year institution. So looking at things, by the way, also IT people, the business users who use the software being developed. So when I'm saying diversity from all of these different things. The reason why this is so important is because it brings different perspectives. I'll give you an example of this. Excuse me, let's say that you're developing a new application, say in the healthcare industry, patient records input, or you're developing an application for your insurance people, insurance clients to allow people to check their policies and input claims directly online. What you probably or should do is the people on your development team, or at least on the design team, what they should do is their demographic should match the demographic of your business user base. The reason is because, let's say, for example, I don't know, Allstate Insurance. I just picked that out of the blue. It could be any insurance company. I certainly said Geico or what. But who'd I say? I'll say just pick on Allstate. So, Allstate wants, to maximize their customer service and allow different levels of input. So what they do is they sit back and they say, wow, you know what? We're going to set up a website that people can do to enter in their own claims. Now, someone else says, gee, we should develop an app for it. Now, what is the difference from that? First of all, who's using computers? Who's using mobile phones? I'm just going to, forgive me for stereotyping a drop here between older and younger clients of theirs. But as an older client, first of all, there are two reasons why I may want to use a website to enter it rather than an app. One of them could be is because the screen is bigger. And as people get a little bit older, their eyesight isn't quite as good. So basically entering in an application using my thumbs on a cell phone probably is not going to be something I want to do. I want a bigger screen. Maybe I'm not that good at technology. Certainly I do it for a profession, but you get the idea. So as a result, going to a website that has lots of instructions and says click here would be great maybe for their baby boomer clients. However, for their Gen Yers, what they may want to do is say, well, gee, why don't we just create an app? Let's just create an app. What do we need a website for? You know, everybody has mobile devices. And then what happens is baby boomer clients call in and say, what's an app? Oh, I have to go to a Google store? Oh, is that the Google website? You know, I'm being a little stereotypic, so please forgive me with that. But what happens is if you have proper diversity on your design team, then probably what you will say is, gee, you know what? The baby boomers will say, you know, to match our constituency, knowing that a lot of my friends my age don't tend to download a lot of apps, that I suggest that we have a website-based version of it. And then, you know, the millennial person might say, gee, you know what? Yeah, I think the website, we should have it. But really, anybody who's my age is going to want to go in and just enter it with their cell phone. You know, if they have a problem with their car or whatever, you know, let them take a picture as part of it, develop the app so they can take pictures directly off their mobile devices, you know, their cell phones, and hook them straight into the app as part of putting in the claim. Which one's right? They're both right. That's why diversity is so important. And again, from all of these perspectives, I could come up with other examples related to male, female, related to anything. I like to use the gender one, I mean the age one, because basically I'm picking on myself and my peers and saying that. Next, so let's look at some examples that have come about because of this diversity, because of difference of thought within the IT organization. The first is, and then I'll explain why this one, but agile methodology implementations include very strong functional specifications to support offshore development. You know, I've seen this time and time again with my clients, the ones we do direct training for and such. And what it is when we start talking about agile, they all say, you know, there's this push-pull that, you know, the agile folks are saying, gee, you know what, we should be, you know, minimize documentation, the small development teams, you know, all of those things that make agile the great tool that it is, or the great methodology, I should say, that it is. However, now they have offshore. And by offshore, let me say, that could be the building down the street. That could be nearshoring, which would be Canada or somewhere else in the U.S. It could be outsourced to India or Czech Republic or wherever, Russia or wherever else it goes. But what happens is with offshore resources, because of the mere fact that they're not physically there with the business users, you have to write much, much better business specifications for them to understand what it is you're trying to do from a business perspective. So as a result is that there's this push-pull between, no, we should follow the agile methodology directly, and hey, you know, practically, if we want these people overseas working with us, we got to give them a better functional spec to work with because they won't learn the business through osmosis because they're not here. So anyway, that causes debate between, well, if we're doing that, why don't we just use waterfall? If we're using agile, why don't we use agile right? So what happens is over time, because of the multiple interests, the multiple goals, the differences of opinion, is that brings things together to no one individually would have come up with this solution, which works very, very well in many IT firms. Next, offshore development teams include on-site intermediaries. There's some great outsourcing firms out there. There's a couple that I know of that I won't say their name, but I'll just say they're outsourcing to India. These particular firms, there are others that are equally of high quality to other countries. This is just the one I know of. And what they do is they have an on-site offshore model. So what they do is that why? Because it was hard for the people in the companies working directly with offshore resources. Why? They didn't know how, there were cultural issues, etc. So what this model is that they have some people from the consulting firm physically on site with the client, and they're the ones handling all of the communication and such between them and the offshore resources, which are at a lower overall cost. So there is another blend of issues that came together to create a really high-quality solution. The next is IT efficiency. Was enhanced due to budget cuts. What that is that they say innovation is the necessity is the mother of invention, etc. Well, what I would say to you here is during what they called the Great Recession from 2008, I would say, to 2011. Quite frankly, from my perspective, I didn't think it was all that great. But anyway, what that did was that caused businesses in general, including IT, to really say, hey, you know what? We have a certain amount of things we need to get done. However, we don't have the money to get them done, so what are we going to do? So there was an incredible amount of business innovation that happened from, for those who were still employed, during the Great Recession. Why? Because companies needed to get things done. They needed to learn what they could live without, and they learned other ways to things that needed to be done to do it at lower cost. Basically, to survive, hopefully remain a little bit profitable until the economy is improved, which certainly it has now. And lastly, server consolidation reduced cost and increased usable computer power. Why? Well, first of all, is that like with green computing, where you want to reduce the carbon footprint of your company, this one is great because it's where social action meets reduced cost. What a win that is for everybody. And now with CPU utilization up because of virtualization, what it does, it actually increases the overall power that the data center has. And by power here, I mean capability, but actually with a reduced footprint. These are all examples of conflicts that came together that caused people within IT to have to come up with creative and innovative solutions. So question number 2. So how do I use this information to my advantage to get things done? Okay, this is where I want everyone to turn on radio station WIIFM, which stands for What's in It for Me? The first thing that you need to do is build relationships. Build relationships, you know that old adage, keep your friends close and your enemies closer? What I would say to you here is that look at this list of things: negotiation, conflict resolution, influence, leadership, sales. All of these things, when done effectively, start with the same first step. That step is building relationships, getting to know the people that you're working with, develop positive, and by relationships, I don't mean like clandestine things on Friday afternoons. What I mean is that strong business relationships. In other words, a working relationship. Like me as an ex-software developer, know 3 or 4 people in the data center that I work well with. That I can call them up, that maybe we've grabbed lunch once, maybe we've just worked together on 3 or 4 projects, but we trust each other professionally, we understand each other's goals and issues and professional interests, etc., based on our job types, and we're able to work together. But all of these things all begin by building a relationship, a trusted relationship with another person, and with that you gain an understanding of their interests, of their strengths based on their job type, their professional goals, their personal goals, given what their job is. With all of these things, this is the first step for all of this stuff. So your first huge giveaway here, assuming, other than the topology and all that other stuff, is this one. Build professional working relationships with those not only that you have to work with, but work well with, but also those that are harder to get along with. Or by the nature of your jobs, there's structural differences that would cause you maybe to not get along. Like, for example, it's much easier to solve a small argument that you have with your brother or sister than it is for someone that you've never met that's only on an email and is 1,000 miles away. With that is the next step for all of these things, as shown here, is to understand other people's goals, know what they're coming from, know their issues. So the first one, in negotiation, what you want to do is you want to gain insights into their interests, not just their position. In other words, my position might be, if I'm in the data center, no, you can't have any more computer power. You can't have any more servers, Mr. Software Developer, because I'm not going to create them for you. That's the position. What's the interest? The interest is, hey, you know what? My bonus this year is going to be based on server consolidation. So what happens is, if I give you 3 more servers, which I'd be happy to do, except for the fact it's going to reduce the chance of me being able to make my bonus. So that's why you want to understand the interests of the other person, because if I can have more computer power but not more servers, maybe I could talk you into hooking me on a bigger machine that has VMware on it. Conflict resolution. You want to understand the reasoning behind what they're saying and not their accusations. So how do you understand their reasoning? You really have to know them a little bit, to understand where they're coming from. In influence is that you have to understand what the audience that you're speaking to. For example, let's say that you're developing a CRM system and you're trying to influence the salespeople to use it. Which one of these 2 scenarios do you think that they would be more likely to want to provide you help? Scenario 1. Hi everybody, I'm from the IT department and we're implementing a new CRM system. This system, by its nature, is going to increase your productivity and efficiency by at least 50%. We're really excited about this because then what we'll do is we'll be able to lay half you guys off, just so the other half will be much more productive. We won't miss a beat. All right, that is scenario 1. Now scenario 2. Hi everybody, I'm from the IT department. We're implementing a new CRM system. We're really, really excited that this system is going to make you guys twice as productive as you are now. With twice as productive, what we're hoping that does is increase sales over the next couple of years by doubling it. And hey, guess what? We double sales. What we're also going to be doubling is your commission, which goes into your pocket. So anyway, we'd really like your assistance in implementing this system. Now, I would say if I'm trying to implement or to influence the sales force by understanding the message of who I'm delivering it to, I'm thinking that the second message would probably get me more assistance than the first. And lastly, leadership is when it's leadership, you can't be parochial and look at only your own interests. You have to look at the interests and goals of everyone involved in the project. Why? Because, well, that's what good leadership is. But how do you understand what their goals and issues are? You have to understand them. Next is you have to think holistically. Now, by holistically, what I mean here is that just because you have a hammer, you don't want everything else to look like a nail. An example of that, what should we develop the new application in? Oh, we should do it in Java and Oracle. Why should we use it in that? Those are the technologies I know, and it looks like a really cool project. Is that you have to think of things from the top of the food chain, as the last bullet point says here. Thinking like a CIO is what's best for the company. Take the high road and say, you know what, maybe Java is the best, but why is it the best? Next is seek collaboration, not compromise. Compromise is, yeah, all right, I'll tell you what, we'll do this one in Java, but we're doing the next one in PHP and MySQL. Deal? Deal. All right, what is that doing? That's just basically getting by it. Maybe there's something collaborative that's going on where the two will dig down together and say, hey, you know what? What really is the right technology in this? Well, you know what? But the problem is if it ends up in LAMP, both of them end up in the LAMP structure, then what's that going to do to me as a Java guy? Well, you want to learn LAMP? Yeah, sure. I'd love to expand my skill set. How about you? What if it makes sense to do it in Java? Yeah, I'd love to get some Java under my belt. It's really marketable. So what you're doing there is you're looking not only at the person's interest, but you're trying to come up with something that's truly, back to the diversity idea. When you have diversity and healthy conflict, you're not compromising, you're collaborating. Next is you have to think architecturally, both from a systems and a data flow perspective. Because if you can do that, you can see the bigger picture. In fact, as you move, for anyone here who are business analysts or working in datacom or sort of systems architecture type roles, is that there's something you should take for homework assignment if you're not familiar with it. It's the term digital transformation. DX, they refer to it as. And what it is that's basically, as it sounds like, transforming company processes, even company products based on advances in digital computing. So it's sort of I like to think of it as process engineering on steroids that is basically company-wide instead of process-wide. Next is one of the biggest trends in IT is moving from IT to BT. You know, it's funny. When I started my career, I was in data processing. Hung around for a few years. Guess where I ended up? MIS, Management Information Systems. Just hung around a few more years, and guess where I ended up? IT, Information Technology. Well, if I hang around a few more years, God willing, I will move from being in IT to being in BT, Business Technology. Is that IT organizations everywhere, for lots of good reasons. You can't just be the head techie anymore. You have to be a strong business person who happens to understand a lot about technology. Look at things from the business perspective, the business solution, what it's doing to enhance the value of the business. Don't just look at it as things that are technically cool or just from a technical perspective. Lastly, if this helps you, I alluded to before, if you think like a CIO in this, by looking at things architecturally, by looking at things from a business perspective, not purely technical, by collaborating rather than just compromising as a way to get things done, and as a result of which you're not basically being parochial with your own technology, well, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Not only will it help you think like a CIO by doing that, but quite frankly, it will help you get there. Our next important topic is the one IT concept. Now, this is the concept that will help you get people around IT working with you. Basically, is that helping you get around the silos within almost any organization. First of all, is that when you look at IT being in it, is that it has many internal groups. It has the help desk, it has software development, it has database management, it has infrastructure, it has datacom. I mean, it has all of these divisions. You know, they may feel very, very separate to you, but you know what? To your business partners, you're all just we're just all IT. They don't really understand the differences. Quite frankly, they don't care. They just want good service. So what happens is the way that IT as an organization can best drive the value to the organization as well as enhance client service is to have a single message where basically whenever you talk to people across IT, you are representing all of IT, and IT is working together. That will help you build and maintain credibility within the organization. Using this concept, hey, you know what? We're all part of the same IT group here. And to the business, that's all they view us as. What that will do is this concept can help you drive internal cooperation within IT. Now, what you're probably thinking of at this point is this. Come on, isn't this stuff easier said than done? Yeah, it is. You know, there's lots of things in here that for some firms might be impossible to do. For others, they're probably already doing it. And there's probably a fair amount in the middle where people are saying, yeah, you know what, I think this might be a stretch, or it might be easy to move toward, or this concept or that concept makes sense. Yeah, I mean, some of this is hard to do. It won't all work for me. But I would say to you is that if you can get one or two, really good nuggets to bring back to the office based on this, then what you'll be able to agree with is the answer to question number 3. And what that is that, yes, it is much easier said than done, but when it works, it's a key driver in IT success. And I would say equally as important from your perspective, it's also a key driver of your success, because you will be gets things done, who's able to, say, navigate and work the system, and I mean that in a very positive way, to figure out how to navigate what needs to be done to get it done. And you will become one of the go-to people in the firm because of your ability to work with others and to be able to get projects through to their success and around potential around potential stumbling blocks. From here, I'd like to thank you for being on. You know, as promised, it would be heavy content. No, no selling or anything through the whole webinar. I hope you found it to be that. This is our one shameless promotion. Is that if you like this webinar, you know, we do a free one every month. Next month's is January 18th, and it's on managing virtual teams. Key tips and tricks. Also is what we run on a monthly basis, shown on the right here, for those interested in IT management and moving into those roles, or in one and would really like to sort of enhance your skill set. The 10 topics that are shown there, cloud computing all the way down to workforce and salary planning, that's 3-day boot camp. The next one we offer is January 26th to 28th, and it is 3 days of drinking through a fire hose. 10 topics in 3 days. It's done virtually, so basically it would be like this, but not at this pace. I mean, we blew through content here with you. If we did that for a whole day, we'd blow people's brains out. So, you know, it's done at an appropriate level, but we cover tons of content. In addition to that, we have 2 one-day classes come up, shown on the left and the bottom. Steve Jobs' Way, Innovation and Leadership You Can Use. You know, when you strip away his vibrato, is that many of the concepts regarding innovation, regarding leadership, regarding product design are just fascinating. I tell you, I was really a big fan of his until I worked to develop this class. And then lastly, on February 2nd, for those interested in oversight and governance, is that we'll be doing a one-day class on governance and oversight as it relates to cloud computing, big data, and data quality. From here, what I'd like to do is further open it up to questions. I'd like to turn it back to Brian for closing remarks. And I'd just like to say to you, have a happy holiday season, happy and healthy new year. And I truly hope that today's webinar was of value to you. Thank you. And any last thoughts from you, Brian?
Yeah, I just want to say if anybody does have any questions for Eric, make sure to just pop those in the chat box at the bottom. Or you can email them to me based off of the invitation for the webinar, and I can forward those to him to answer for you. I don't see anything coming in, so I want to once again thank Eric from Management Mechanics for taking the time to do this wonderful webinar for us. It's my second time watching this one. I learn more and more every time. It's a great webinar. And I'd also like to thank everybody that attended, and I hope that you got a lot out of it. And don't forget, we have other ones that we do. We have one coming up, like he said, on January 18th. It's also a fantastic one. So please check out that one to register for that one too. So thanks a lot, everybody, and thanks a lot again, Eric.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.